Welcome to the latest edition of The Blend. My name is Steve Benz. I have got rock royalty today. His name is Paul Carrack. You're going to recognize, maybe not him, but his voice from the band Ace, Squeeze, Mike and the Mechanics, solo work, and a duet with Terry Nunn. Paul, welcome to the show.
Hi, how you doing, Steve?
That's a pretty big, long list for a resume.
It's been a long career.
That it has. When I went back, and I don't do a lot of background on all this, but I remember me starting out, 100 years ago, playing the song Ace, and I did not realize that was you and that you wrote that. So how about that?
Yeah, afraid so. That was probably one of the first songs I ever wrote, if not the first, and definitely the first time I sang lead on a record. So yes, it was a little bit of a shock to the system, but
Is that something that you're comfortable with? You talk about your first time stepping out front. If I recall, you were a drummer. Is that how this started?
yeah, I started out as a young kid playing drums, just on an old sort of, well, you couldn't really call it a drum kit. It was a few bits and bobs that I found in the attic
Mhm.
that my dad used to dabble with, and started playing in little bands at school. And but by the time I was left school, age 16, I was kind of I'd switched to the organ. Now I got to uh, tell you that I wasn't very good. I taught myself to play. Someone showed me a few chords, and I bought this organ just in order to join the local soul band, and that's how I started playing organ.
Just to join a band. It
Yeah,
sounds like every American dream. We join a band just to date the girls.
and then we learn how to play in that order.
I'm trying now. I'm trying to pick up the guitar and I'm just so bad at it, but I look good. That's what matters.
Well, that's half the battle, I suppose.
Isn't it? Isn't it? Now, before we talk about some of your background, let's talk about the brand new track, You're Not Alone. It is doing really well here in the States. So bravo to you, my friend.
Well, excellent. That's good news. I mean, we had a good response because it's already been out a few weeks in the UK, and it's had a very good response there also. I mean, on the mainstream BBC station, it was Record of the Week, and that was great. As because I've been busy during lockdown and making a whole album by myself here at home, and that the album will come out in June. But we thought it'd be great to start the ball rolling a little bit with this ballad, you know.
Now, you talked about not being really good at the organ, and now you're talking about playing all the instruments on this CD. So,
Yeah.
what are you really good at playing, or do you just kind of work through it? I guess.
Well, I mean, Steve, I've been doing it for a long time now. I mean, I am totally self-taught, but I do have, fortunately, I do have the musical gene. My dad's side of the family were musical family, and although, as I say, I kind of lost contact with them when I was quite young. When sadly my father passed away, but there was always my brother played guitar, so there was always a guitar knocking around. I'd started out bashing drums, playing along to the Beatles records and things like that, and so I've taught myself to play, several instruments. I'm not a great technical or
Sure.
wizard or anything, but I do have the ear and the musical instincts, so I've kind of taught myself along the way and still learning.
Do you read music too, or do you
No,
just
I don't. I never got to read the dots. I tried, but I found that quite difficult because I would just play a tune once and then I'd kind of remember it, and so that made it tricky. So it's not been. I would have loved to have had a musical education, to be honest with you, because it would be great to have more theory and all that stuff. But I'm fortunate to have been born in an age when you can get by quite well with a few chords. So very fortunate to be
is that
to
what
be
rock is? It's three chords and something loud somewhere along the way.
exactly
Now,
exactly.
now with that, with the new track specifically, You're Not Alone, where did you start? Did it start with a melody? Did it start with a lyric? How did you build that song?
Well, it pretty much always starts with a melody for me. That's the bit I find quite easy. I just come over to my studio, start pick up the guitar or the keyboard, and you know, come up with a melody, an idea, or a concept, or lyrics. I find a lot harder. Um, but I think what happened in this case was I kind of had this. It's a fairly standard sort of setup, for the melodically speaking. But and off the top of my head, which what usually happens is I sing some nonsense off the top of my head and then have to try and make sense of it. Well, it just so happens at this time I was thinking subconsciously about a couple of people
Right.
very close to me, people who are having a hard time with the lockdown situation and other things, and I just thought it came out that it's kind of in a way of support,
Mhm.
support for those people.
Is that the theme of the new CD that's coming out or album?
No, I don't think so. I didn't set out to make any kind of concept or a theme. I mean, I started out with a blank sheet of paper. Basically, I came over. All our road work was cancelled. I had to
Right.
do something with myself, So I'm fortunate. I've got a nice space here where I can work, and it's been great therapeutically to just come in here and work on my stuff. And no, a lot of, to be honest, it's probably the only ballad on the album as such. I mean, there's a lot of upbeat stuff, and the lockdown thing keeps drifting in subconsciously, but no, I didn't set out for to do that particularly.
Do you practice these instruments? You sit down and you go, well, I need to do some chords or whatever.
Well, it is important to keep ticking over, definitely.
Right.
I've never been a great practicer as such, but just to keep playing, and it's quite important for the voice as well to keep your voice ticking over,
Sure.
because it's kind of like any other kind of fitness thing that if you let it go for too long, it's hard. It takes a while to get it back going again.
So, what instruments spoke to you when you first started out?
Um, Electric guitars.
Right.
Yeah, I grew up listening to the electric guitar bands of the '60s,
Sure.
and but I found the drums easier because you don't have to worry about all those fancy notes and stuff. You can just bash and it's pretty instant. How people learn to play the saxophone or the violin, I have no idea, because just getting any kind of notes out of it is a nightmare. But no, I was very struck. Originally, it was a instrumental band in the UK called the Shadows, and they were the backing band of an artist called Cliff Richard, who's very big in the UK.
Richard, sure.
I wasn't such a fan of Cliff, but I loved the Shadows, and they did these instrumentals. Then, of course, it was the whole Liverpool scene,
Makes
the
sense.
the Beatles, the Searchers, and by this time, I'm kind of bashing along to records, playing drums, and I saw the Beatles a couple of times,
Wow.
and I saw Ringo, and I thought, that'll do for me. And but as I say, then at one point, I wanted to join this band, a local band who were really good, and they needed an organ player. There weren't so many keyboard players around back in them days. Um, so literally, someone showed me a few chords. I stood at the back. I played very quietly, and I've been getting away with it ever since.
Well, you've had a pretty low profile considering uh, everyone recognizes your voice. At least here in the
Yeah.
States, everyone recognizes your voice. I could drop any track where you're on and they'll know who you are.
Well, they probably don't know the name though. As you say, they will
They'll
obviously
recognize
recognize,
your voice. Absolutely.
and because I have that all the time. I mean, people say, "Oh, you're a musician? Oh, okay. And what do you?" And I said, "Paul Carrack," and they don't, "I've never heard of you." And you say, "Well, you know that song, How Long? How?" Oh, yeah, I love that song.
Are
But
you
that's
that
kind of been
guy? You're the guy.
that's kind of been the story of my recent career. Now, in the UK and slightly further afield in some parts of Europe, yeah, I've kind of done a lot of work in recent years,
Mhm.
talking to people, explaining how it's all come about. And I have a much more of a sort of profile probably in the UK, but America's a big old place,
It is.
and it's hard to do it as an independent, But I've always loved coming to the States with the various bands over the years. It's the home of rock and roll. Let's face it.
Mhm.
It's a fantastic place to play, and I love to come over. But as a solo artist in the name Paul Carrack, I don't know if I could fill a very big room, to be honest with you.
Well, the new thing here in the States is, if you remember back in the 50s, at least here in the States, they would grab 10 bands and then you would go out and you're sing your hits for 20 minutes or 25 minutes. And then you would
Yeah,
kind of like what Ringo Starr does.
exactly. Yes. In fact, when I saw the Beatles, I think they only played 4 songs. I think
Wow.
they play. I think they played 2 before the intermission and 2 after, if I'm not mistaken. I could have been. It was a long time ago, but they didn't play like an hour and a half like we do.
Can you imagine doing that? 4 songs. Good night, everybody. Thanks.
Good night.
You know, tip your people on your way out. Boy, you'd all be rich. That would be a great gig for me. I go and see stuff like that. I say, hey, hello, and then off we go. So that's a lot of fun.
You just reminded me. I was in when I was in New Orleans last time a couple of years ago, and I was walk from the hotel to go and get some coffee each day, and I walked past this guy, and I thought, wow, he sounds pretty good, and then chuck him something in the cap there, and then I'd come back and he'd be playing that same lick, and then I suddenly realized he had one lick, which he was playing all day, and that one sounded really good, but he didn't have anything else. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So who'd you want to be when you first stepped up to the microphone? Who did you want to be, or who did you emulate?
Well, I wasn't really singing in my early days. We had usually each band had a designated singer, good
Right?
looking guy, a tall guy. And I did some backing vocals and what have you. But it wasn't until we formed that band Ace in the
Sure.
early 70s. That's when I first started singing on a record. But my as I say, I loved all the Liverpool bands and all that. But in my teens, it was all soul and Motown in particular. And I love all those guys. I love all the Motown artists, and of course, in the more southern things, the Memphis
Mhm.
sound and Stax and all that, Atlantic, all those great records. And don't ask me why, but that's kind of the way I lean. And I'm not a music analyst. I'm not about to try and analyze it, but it feels quite natural to sing in that kind of style a lot of the time.
So what type of tracks did you sing? I'm sure you did covers of specific songs that you just loved back then. Do you recall what they were?
Yeah, of course. I'm just trying to think now. Are we talking about kind of Ace
Or
days,
whenever
that sort of stuff?
whenever you stepped up to the microphone. So now if Ace was when that time started, or if Elizabeth
Well,
before.
yeah, we've always, as I say, always had a pretty varied career. I mean, we loved all the American bands.
Sure.
We loved people. I love Stevie Wonder, Marvin Gaye, David Ruffin, in the soul vernacular. But we also were big fans of bands like the Eagles
Right.
and all that stuff.
A lot of harmonies. A lot of harmonies.
Yes, yes. Well, I am a big fan of harmony. I mean, I'm not a real rock and roll shouter or belter. I mean, in life, I like harmony. Prefer harmony to strife any day of the week.
Sure. Well, that fits. That fits where your voice is.
Yeah.
Like,
I often used to envy people who had a good scream, a Little Richard or somebody like that. 'Cause I never had a real good, I never had one of them. I always had this kind of sweet voice.
maybe you could do your own version of some John Lennon. Do what was the track that
Twist
Twist
and
Shout?
shout,
Yeah,
twist and shout. Yeah.
right. And you blow out your vocal cords after
Yeah.
every four tries.
Yeah, not a good idea. But anyway, didn't do John any harm though.
Now that kind of reminds me of the track that you did with Terry Nunn from Berlin. How did
Oh
that
yeah.
come about?
How did it come about?
Interesting duet. And
Yeah, I
boy, you
mean,
did really well too. So I know
it,
Terry.
do you?
Yeah, I do.
Well,
That
I haven't seen her since we recorded that. I hadn't met her before we recorded it, and I haven't seen her afterwards. It's just one of those things that I'm trying to think how it came about because it's not something that I get asked very often. But I think it was literally because it was for a movie, and I think it just got a call out of the blue. It was written by, if I'm not mistaken, a guy called Dean Pitchford, and I think they just put Terry and I together,
well,
and thinking it would be a good blend, and it was great. It was good fun.
we'd
She's quite a character.
like to hear two of you again. That would be really good.
Well, who knows?
Are
Who
there
knows?
other singers that you would like to do duets with now at this part of your life in your career? Do you see someone else that you'd like to do songs with, or someone you'd like to perform with, or haven't performed with?
It's not something I particularly think about. In fact, most things that I've been involved with over the years have just happened. They just came about somehow, and so it isn't something I'm looking to do. But if it did happen, I mean, I'd love to sing with someone like Bonnie Raitt. I always loved Bonnie's voice. I
Great.
mean, there's so many great people out there, and any ladies out there who fancy doing a duet, just give me a shout. You never know.
I'll make some calls for you. Let's see
I'm
what.
not very good at saying no, as you've probably seen from my career.
So, how'd you get from band to band? Just looking at the type of people that you've worked with, you talked about the Eagles. You were in Mike and Mechanics, Ace. You've done a lot of solo work. You've done some duets. How does a musician go from place to place, and how do you adapt?
Well, as I say, there's never been any kind of plan it's whatsoever, and I'm not. Also, I'm not a big social animal in that respect. I'm a social climber. I've just kind of got on with things, and things have just presented themselves, and I've always been open to any kind of thing. I've never been sort of particularly have a mindset in mind that this is me and this is what I do, which probably has not been that helpful. But nevertheless, I'm totally grateful to have made a career from music in any way, shape, or form. And so I have no complaints.
I mean, your career measures up with everyone, and even the BBC. They called you what the man with the golden voice? Was that the BBC?
Was it what? Sorry.
Wasn't it the BBC that called
Yeah.
you the man with the golden voice?
Yes, they did,
Yeah.
which was that was their idea to call it that. I wanted to call it "How Long Has This Been Going On?" But some bright spark there had wanted to call it "The Man with the Golden Voice," which was a little bit embarrassing, of course, because it can be golden, but there are those nights, those twist and shout moments as well.
Sure. Again, it gets back to everyone can identify the voice, which is true of a lot of members. We would even look at some of the bands where they've changed lead singer or whatever. People just come out. They don't even recognize that it's someone else singing the songs, but they know your voice. I
Mm.
can play anything on my shows and they will know your voice. Again, maybe not the name, but that's even true with myself, my own career. They'll know my voice, but they won't know my name.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, and that's kind of the way it is. And when you consider, I suppose, that it's been a very varied career and there's been
Mhm.
different genres and all the rest of it, it's interesting that you say that you can still recognize the voice even in the different kind of settings. So, yeah, good. I'm glad we had this chat now.
Would you, with the return of Genesis specifically, since you worked with Mike Rutherford, would you try to go back? And if he said the Mechanics want to go on tour, would you do that? Do you think you'd do that?
No, I don't think so. In fact, there has been a different recently. Well, a few years ago, a completely different lineup.
Yep,
I mean,
that I've seen.
Mike put together, and I'm sure it was very good. I know Andrew Roachford is a great singer,
Mhm.
but I wanted to crack on and give myself some time to have my own career and to have my own catalog. That was quite important to me. I realized at a fairly late stage, I've sung these hits, and in many cases, I had no particular rights to the songs,
Okay.
and and as you say, people didn't recognize the voice. I just wanted to have my own catalog of songs and music and give myself the opportunity to do my own thing, because I've enjoyed the opportunity to play with all these different people, and I'm forever grateful. As I say, many musicians haven't made a living out, but I have, and but I wanted to have my own identity and give me that time, give myself that time, and it's difficult to get too involved in those other projects.
Now, speaking of identity, are there songs that you most identify with to say, this is a Paul Carrack song? This is who I am. That moment where you show more of yourself than at any other point. Is there a song like that?
Well, I think I've been doing that now for, as I say, I think it's 20 years. We started the my own little label, and that's when I started to totally independently produce my solo stuff. I think I've made something like 16 or 17 albums. They tell me. I'm not counting. I'm still trying to write the good one, which I think I've done. I'm with this new album. I like to think I'm getting better at it. That's my reason for doing it.
It's kind of interesting as I would listen to your catalog and the things that you sang. As I got older, I identified more with what you were singing with. Versus, when I'm in my 18 and my 20s, I'm just starting out. I was just playing anything that was loud. If I could
Hmm.
play Led Zeppelin all day, I would. Didn't know what
Hmm.
the heck they were talking about or singing about. But now, as I look back, it's no, I want to listen to Paul Carrack. I want to listen to
Oh, you're definitely
Palmer.
getting
I
old,
want to listen to
Steve.
certain people. So right now. So
Yeah,
interesting.
well, that's definitely a sign of age, Steve. If you stop listening to Zeppelin and you're listening to Paul Carrack, I'm afraid there's no hope for you.
That's right. That's actually really funny. That's really, really true. If you're going, Led Zeppelin, a little too loud for me now. I'm getting old, right?
Definitely.
Well, it's like turn it down just a little bit. No more. Turn it to 11. I'd like it like 4 or 5. So,
When you find yourself going, that's not music. That's
and which is happens here is I
put
get
some
off my
Paul
phone.
Carrack on,
That's right. But I know that guy. It's that guy, Paul Carrick, sorry, and get
If
off my
oh,
phone.
if only I could. If only I could knew his name. I know this. I know the sound of the voice. Just got to find him anywhere.
It's Mike and those guys. That guy who sang Call to Arms.
Yeah, Mike. He's the singer. Obviously, he's the
My
name at the front.
You wrote Call to Arms, right? For Mike McCann?
Oh, I didn't write that. No, I think I sang that one. I didn't write it.
Yeah, that is another one that everyone identifies. The second I play that, they actually know who you are. Like, no, that's the Mike Mechanic song. Even Over My Shoulder is another track, although did not do really well here in the States. That's another track that people request all the time.
Well, that's interesting, actually. Yeah, Over My Shoulder. That was a big hit,
Yeah.
UK and Europe, not in the States. But Call to Arms, was that a well-known track over there?
Yes.
I thought it was just kind of an album track,
No.
but anyway, interesting.
It's interesting the certain ones that people want to hear in living years. That has been really, really big during COVID. That's another track.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Living Years was a number one in America for sure. And in fact, we were nominated for all kinds of Grammy awards that year, and we performed live at the Grammys, which was scary. With the front row of Stevie Wonder, Ella Fitzgerald, Michael McDonald, Billy Joel. It's like, oh my God. And we were nominated for the best song or best vocal, and we performed live. And then shortly after, Bette Midler performed live and tore the place
Right.
to pieces. And I thought, for God's sake, don't give us the award that we'll never get out of here alive.
Oh my God. Hey, at least she performed after. Could you
Yeah.
imagine following
No.
her?
No.
All right, so let's get back to your new song, your new album. I want to make sure we do some great promotion for that. The new single is "You're Not Alone." Is there a follow-up already planned?
Yeah, yeah, we've got it all mixed and ready to go here in the UK. It's called Good and Ready.
Okay.
And it's a bit more upbeat,
Mhm.
and so yeah, we'll see.
When can we expect the CD/album to drop?
Well, the album release date is June the 25th.
Okay.
That's the schedule we've been working towards. So initially, we should have delivered that by the end of April to put the nuts and bolts. I actually got sick, not with COVID. I got this thing called shingles, which was
Oh,
horrible.
oh,
And that took the wind out of my sails for a few weeks. Um, but we're hoping to make up time. I think if we deliver the album by the end of this month, we'll be right slap bang on time for June the 25th.
So how does it look for performing this year? As America starts to open up, is Europe starting to open up as well?
Well, it's just seems to be a shifting sea. It just changes every day. I don't even try to keep track with it. We have dates. We have a few isolated dates in July, August here in the UK, festivals where there's supposed to be social distancing and this, that, and the other. October, we're going to Holland, hopefully. But in September, I'm supposed to come to the States with playing in Eric Clapton band,
Wow.
which I've been doing for the last
Wow.
7-8 years. I've been playing organ in the Clapton band. And they've kept rescheduling. And the dates in September, we're told they're very confident that it's going to happen. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, it looks good. And if you head to America, we'll get together and you could show me how to play the organ or something. Whatever it is.
Fantastic.
Paul, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on. We will have you back in a couple of months as well as we get a little bit closer to your tour dates.
Fantastic.
Paul
Thanks, Steve.
Carrack, everybody, go to paulcarrack.net and see all the latest information from Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.